Good evening. My name's Bob Harb. I'm the Plaistow Town Moderator, and I'm happy to have all of you here with us tonight, and those of you watching on cable. I'd like to open this program as we normally do with a pledge to our flag. Would you all please stand and please join with me in a pledge to Old Glory. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First, I'd like to welcome to the podium the chairman of our Library Board of Trustees, Jim Peck. He's going to have some announcements and something to say to us, and then I'll give you the agenda of tonight, and we'll move on with the candidates tonight. Jim.
Thank you, Bob. As Bob said, I'm Jim Peck. I'm the chair of the Library Trustees, and first thing I want to ask you to do is silence your cell phones, if you could. Thank you. I want to welcome everybody here. I did a quick count of the number of people in the room, and there's 38 people here, which is a pretty good turnout. I cheated. I counted us up front here, too. And I don't know how many people are at home, but if you could raise your hand, I'll try to count the people at home. The library has sponsored this for many years. I just asked Norm if he can remember if it was done at the old library, and he said it wasn't done there. It may have been done at Town Hall, but I know we've done it here for many, many years. And I looked back and I saw some pictures of a candidates' night. I think it was held at Town Hall in 1954. So this is an old event. The library, okay, we have a beautiful library here. I know Barry Hantman's from Danville. He's on the panel tonight. He was saying it was a nice, beautiful library. Thank you, Barry. This library is now 20 years old, believe it or not. Some people remember when it was built 20 years ago in the year 2000. And I just want to give you a save the date. People at home and people here. We're going to have a big shindig on May 16th, Saturday, May 16th. So if you want to put that on your calendar, we haven't locked in the exact dates, but that's the date for our 20th anniversary. It's actually a day late. It's actually May 15th, but we cheated a little. And what we've been doing the last year or so has been trying to spruce up the grounds of the library. You notice we put a nice stone wall by the road. We cleared the road. It was kind of a mess out there and put a stone wall out there. And one other thing we're going to do, and we're looking for input from you and people at home, people from the town, is we're going to try to do something on what I call the lawn, which is the little triangle on the other side of the road. I'm sorry, on this side of Main Street, but on the other side of our driveway. This area out here, which is a little bit wet, but we want to do something there. So we're looking for any and all ideas. If you have an idea, just give it to somebody at the library, give it a cab, give it to me, and we're going to decide on doing something out there, be it a walkway or statues or something out there that people can use, because that area belongs to the library and we just never used it. In fact, there's a plan that was done 20 years ago, and it was a beautiful plan, but they never pulled the trigger on it. We have 15 candidates running for 19 positions. I'm including school and town. We have 10 candidates running for 16 positions in the town and 3 candidates running for 5 positions at the school. I'm sorry, 5 candidates running for 3 positions at the school. So we do have only two contested seats. The school board and the school moderator, which is next up. All right, just a little bit of history since I'm involved in the town history. We've been electing town officers for 271 years in Plaistow. In fact, we elected officers 6 years before the town was formed. The town was initially formed in 1749, but the 6 years before that, it was called the Haverhill District, which was part of the province of New Hampshire. They did elect selectmen back then and a moderator and a town clerk. But back in the 1700s and the 1800s, again, a little bit of history here, they had a little different positions. And I just want to read off some of the interesting positions that they had back then. I know you know some of these, Norm. They had a tithing man, that they voted for. I'm not really sure what they did, but that was interesting. They also had fence surveyors. They had as many as 10 fence surveyors. They had hog reeves. We don't have any hog reeves tonight. But the hog reeves were responsible for making sure that hogs didn't stray into somebody else's territory. They also had something called the clearers of the fish course, which I found puzzling because we don't really have a lot of streams here, but somebody got elected as the clearer of the fish course. And the one that we got stumped on was something called the colors of the staves. And Scott and I finally looked it up, and we found it was the guy who weighed the barrel staves. I guess it was important back then to make sure that people got their money's worth for barrel staves, color of the staves. Anyway, a little bit of history. On the table back there, a little bit of housekeeping, just so you know, there's a few things that you might want to get if you haven't already. There's a 2019 town report, beautiful town report. These are free. We have a town ballot. I don't have it to hold up, but there's a sample ballot back there if you haven't seen it. Maybe you can hold that up, Scott. So you can kind of practice what you want to vote for before. And it's both the school and the town. And what Scott just held up is the voter's guide, too. So those are on the table back there if you want to get them. And those people at home, if you want to come into the library, we have plenty of copies for everybody. Where am I here? Okay, I wanted to mention a couple of interesting facts. I know people want to get on with this, but here's a quick couple. Last year, we had 984 people vote in Plaistow. That's out of 5,744 registered voters. That's a turnout of 17%. A little bit disappointing. But when you look at other towns, it's not that unusual. Plaistow usually gets less than 1,000 on a March election. Now, when you go to a presidential election, it gets up to around 70%, I think. The other thing I wanted to mention was kind of interesting. This will be interesting for Jay DeRoche. The last time there was an unopposed selectman running, guess when? 2011. And the good news for you, Jay, is that Bob Gray won. He had 85% of the vote. Let's see if you can beat him. A few thank yous are in order. I want to thank Scott for arranging this thing. He does a great job. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, you can clap. That's fine. You can bow.
I'll take all the credit, none of the blame.
Yeah. We have Dean Zanello, who's in the back filming. He does a great job, and he's the guy operating these cameras you see up here. These cameras we put in a couple of years ago, and these are state-of-the-art cameras, so beware. They'll catch everything in the room, as my wife knows. Okay, the moderators for the night. I do want to thank the two moderators. Bob Harb, you've already met, and Bob's going to be also on the panel. He's currently the town moderator for the town of Plaistow, and he's the acting school moderator as well. He's also a town rep for 2 years?
And my second.
Second year, he's in his second year, and I only mention that because Norm Major is here, and Norm has been, I don't know how long you've been a rep, though.
24 years.
24 years as a town rep. So let's give, what's even more impressive, I hope I get this right, 53 years in town offices. Goes back to 1967?
Yes.
If I did my math right, 53 years. So let's give Norm a round of applause. And one thing I'm a historian and Norm knows this, and I found a 1979 Plaistow News. I just want to read the first part of it. It's very interesting. Norman L. Major of Kingston Road, Plaistow, was announcing his candidacy for selectman. Norm says, I have made this decision after being persuaded to run for this office by many prominent citizens of this town. That sounds good anyway. I'm sure they did. I'm just kidding you. Norm brings with him the knowledge of local government on various levels, plus the experience of serving on the town budget committee for the past 2 years. He is presently the vice chairman of this committee. So it's kind of interesting to see, but 53 years. Let's give him another round of applause here. We appreciate you being here. Yeah. You look just a little younger, not much. You get mad at me. Okay, so that's enough for me. I'm going to turn it over to Bob. I'm actually going to turn it over to Norm. Bob? I'm going to turn it over to Bob. There's too many moderators. The last thing I'm going to say is the moderator will moderate the moderators. Okay, here we go.
Thank you, Jim. You took up all the time for the next two candidates, but I appreciate your presentation. Just to give you an idea of the agenda, we're first going to have Norm is going to moderate the school district moderators candidates. And as we mentioned, Barry and I will take a seat to my right. That's the first round. Second round, we're going to have the school board and the school budget committee candidates. The third round, we're going to have the selectmen, the budget committee for the town, and the planning board for the town candidates. So we're going to have 3 flights of candidates. The rules for the candidates are, if they're unopposed, they have 90 seconds for a presentation initial. If they're opposed, they have up to 2 minutes. Each candidate will be given 90 seconds to answer a question. If there's more than one candidate, they'll alternate which candidate answers the question first. All candidates will have 1 minute for a conclusion and a wrap-up. In front of me, against the wall, there's a basket, pencils, and paper. We have taken some questions from the internet, and if you're here and would like to ask a question, we ask you to get a piece of paper, write the question down, and if you can catch either Scott or Jim's or even Norman's attention, we'll pick up your questions, and we'll have time in between what I call the flights of candidates in order to collect candidate questions for perhaps the next group. So it's basically the school moderator, then the school candidates, then the town candidates. So you can think about which questions you want to write first so that we'll have them to add to our online questions. We do have a microphone, and if necessary, or if we run out of written questions but someone wants to speak, if we have time, we'll allow you to ask the question from the floor. My notes from the library trustees say, as I do during all the deliberative and the other sessions that I moderate, please be considerate for those here. Be considerate for all the candidates, and please watch your tone. And if we just had some decorum here and stayed calm, I know there's a lot of hot issues, we can have a wonderful night and an opportunity for those of you here and those at home to query the candidates and hopefully get your questions answered. Somebody didn't follow Jim's rules. If you might be an emergency, so that's okay. No, she said she tried. So if you haven't, check your phones, see what you can do, put them on vibrate. And next I'd like to call up Norm Major so he can moderate the first session or the first flight of the school district moderators. And I'd like to ask Barry if you'd come forward, and Barry and I will take our seats. Thank you, Norm.
While Barry and Bob are getting settled, I think we're fortunate to have 2 men running for this office who have experience as being moderators. Barry's been moderator for the town of Danville for, about 10 years?
10 years.
And Bob has been moderator of Plaistow for a number of years. I don't remember.
Going on 10.
Going on 10, right. So we'll start off by asking Barry first. Why do you want to run for the school position of school district moderator?
Well, as I said, I've been living in Danville for about 30 years. I've been a moderator for 10. I've also been the chairman of the town's planning board. I've been on the planning board in Danville for about 25 years, but chairman for over 10 of those. I'm the chairman of the town's cable TV committee, and I'm also a Boy Scout leader in Danville. I believe in giving something back to the community. That's always been important to me, and it's something as a scout leader that I impress on the scouts that we have in the troop, that it's always important to give something back to others. Being a town moderator, being a school district moderator, is something that I see in that regard. As a moderator, I see a certain role that the moderator has. One is keeping control of the meeting. Our school district meeting is not an easy meeting to control, and I congratulate Bob for having done the recent meeting. It's a large group of diverse opinions. Keeping that in control is a difficult task. Obviously, the moderator has to know the rules for the session and do a little bit of homework ahead of time, making sure they understand the types of issues that might come up and how to address those. They have to keep the meeting moving. Nobody wants to sit in a meeting that goes on and on and on forever, so it's important that they keep the meeting to a fair time. They want to make sure they're being fair, but they also want to make sure that they're letting the audience know what they're doing so that everybody in the audience understands that it's a fair process.
Bob?
Yes, thank you, Norm. As Norm mentioned, I've been town moderator for 8 years, and I'm on the ballot this year for the next 2-year term. I have been an assistant to Mr. Ranelette for about 6 years at the school district as his assistant, along with Norm and a couple of other assistants. The last 2 years, I was fortunate to be asked. 1 year, Mr. Ranelette was not able to be present, so I took over and moderated 2 years ago. This last term, as some of you may know, Steve moved to Haverhill, Mass., moved out of the state, so he resigned as moderator. I then was sworn in as moderator pro tem, and I had the opportunity to run the last school district deliberative session. So over the last 2 years, I've had also the opportunity, as many of you know, and I heard someone mention tonight, I'm also an attorney, so I've had a lot of contact and was able to create a rapport with the school district attorney, Jim O'Shaughnessy. And we've had a good rapport together, worked to get ready for both meetings, and any questions I have, we did a great job working together. I firmly believe in all those things that Barry said that a moderator should do at a school meeting, and I think if you've watched me the last 2 meetings, you've seen that I've basically done that. I want to continue my service to the school district. My 2 children went all the way through the Timberlane Regional School District. I want to continue serving the district. I think it's important, and I want to continue with that job, and I ask for your vote.
Okay, the first question is a little difficult. And I'll ask Bob first, is what would you do with somebody that gets out of line? And how do you silence them?
Well, I have had that issue in the past. I won't mention names, but I've had that issue. And the first thing, and the second part of that question, I make a sincere effort not to silence anybody. I believe at a public meeting, everybody has an opportunity to be heard. The question is they need to be civil, they need to be respectful, they need to be reasonable. I always try to speak directly first with the person that I may be told they might be causing a disruption. I have done that in the past at school meetings, and then I find out by simply speaking to them one-on-one, person to person, with logic, I've been able to get those persons not to be disruptive and to respect the rules of the district. If I really was forced that they were out of line, then I would have to call in the police department. We always have police, not only at town deliberative sessions, but at the school deliberative sessions, and ask the policemen to first just speak to them, to ask them to calm down, be civil, be respectful. I'd be really at the end of trying all these things if I needed to ask them to be removed. That would be my last ultimate, not my first choice, hopefully not one I'd have to take. But having this experience in the past, I believe it can be handled before you get to that point.
Barry, the same question.
Anybody who's been a moderator knows that you get some people who just, I'll say, don't want to behave. They're in every crowd. One of the ways to take care of that is to set the rules up front, to make sure that everybody's aware of what the rules of the meeting are, how you intend to run it. In addition, most times, I won't say all the time, but most times, you know who the people are who are going to be the ones who might get out of hand. And as moderator, I've always made an attempt to talk to them before the meeting, let them know what is permitted, what is not permitted, and make sure that they are aware of the rules for the meeting. As Bob said, obviously, you do have the police department there if you need to make use of them. I've never needed to make use of them. Typically, if you tell a person that they've gone far enough, they'll usually act accordingly if you've spoken to them up front and let them know what the rules are.
Well, thank you, Barry. And now I'm going to ask a little more of a challenging question, and that is, a few years ago at the Timberlane School District meeting, the school officials gave about a 20-minute presentation on the budget. And then right after that, somebody jumped up and limited anybody else speaking to about a couple of minutes. What would you say, how would you handle that if somebody wanted to get up and make a presentation in opposition? Barry.
Do you want to take it
Or
first?
Bob
You want me-
first.
Bob, I think
Whatever.
That's one first. Go ahead.
I thought I took the last one first, but that's okay.
Okay, now, if you want me to take it, I'll take it.
Why don't we have Barry take it first?
Okay. First, obviously, for our school district, we do have a budget hearing that's prior to the deliberative session. I believe the long presentation by the Budget Committee really belongs at that budget hearing and not at the deliberative session. The deliberative session is meant for the people of the district to be able to ask their questions and have their questions answered. There's nothing wrong with giving a summary of the budget, but the 20-minute detailed presentation, I think, is inappropriate there. As for somebody from the audience wanting to get up and give a presentation that's that long, no, I don't think that's appropriate. And again, that's some of the rules that I think you need to set up front and tell them what is and isn't allowed for presentations. Obviously, with the number of people that you have there at the district level, if everybody wanted to give a 20-minute presentation, we'd never end. So you just need to set the rules up front and do that and make sure that the discussion was kept to an appropriate level.
Okay, the question was, if after the 20-minute presentation, somebody from the audience got up and wanted to give a counter presentation, but somebody got up right before him and said, we're going to limit any further presentations to 2 minutes, how would you handle the person that wanted to give a counter presentation?
I don't think I'd accept the motion to limit discussion to 2 minutes, okay? That's not fair to the people in the audience who came to get their questions answered. Now, again, you want to set the rules up front as to what you do permit for discussion from people, because again, you don't want people presenting forever. But if you set the rules up front, I believe that's the way to handle it.
Bob?
Yes, thank you, Norm. I believe after that incident, the school district moderator's rules were amended to limit the presentation time of those presenting the warrant article. I believe the rules were also amended to allocate a certain amount of time to those who make counter presentations. If there's a motion on the floor and it's the will of the people, then I would go with the will of the people, although I may not agree with it personally. As a moderator, it's not my job to enter my personal feelings into the discussions. It's simply to see what the will of the people is. I, like Barry, don't think 2 minutes is relevant, a good time to limit. And sometimes when we go to moderator training school, which I've been all these years, they suggest, although we don't have a personal opinion in this school or in moderating, we can offer a suggestion. So in the 2-minute suggestion, it might be a suggestion that maybe more time should be allocated, and if not, somebody else can make another motion to allocate more time for the counter proposal. So even if the school moderator rules say counter proposals have 2 minutes, that can be overruled by the body, and we would go along with the rule of the body.
Fine. I've been told I could ask one more question, and what I'm going to do is take the question that's been given to me. What are the top 3 and this would be for Bob first. What are the top 3 qualifications for a school moderator, and why do you meet these better than your opponent? I'm reading what I've been given.
I'll start backwards. I've only met Barry yesterday when I went to Danville. He seems like a nice gentleman, and we got along famously. And he treated me well when I visited his town hall, and I know we're treating him well being here. So it's a question of experience. We always get that asked in any office we run from. What experience do you have? Barry and I both have a lot of experience as town moderators. But you heard Barry say, being a school district moderator is different. The first time I was assisting, it became knowledgeable to me that this is a different forum. This is a different, my friend says animal. It's different, and it takes time to get used to that difference, and how do you handle that difference? And then having stepped up for 2 years in a row to actually moderate them, I believe that gives me the experience to move forward. So I would think my experience, the fact that I've done it for a number of years, the fact that I'm already entrenched with working with the staff and also the attorney for the school district, I think that gives me the qualifications to ask you to let me continue in my service to the Timberlane Regional School District.
Barry?
I won't speak ill of Bob. I have the utmost respect for him, especially the last 2 years stepping up with short notice and running that school district meeting. As you and I both said, it's a different animal. It's a difficult meeting to manage. So what are the traits that are important in doing that? One is leadership skills, and I think the experience I've had both in my work life, in the town positions I've held as moderator, planning board chairman, things like that, give me a lot of leadership experience. And then I think people skills, just to be the ability to speak with people, to understand what they're getting at, and to be able to speak with them on a one-on-one level. I think that's important for a moderator to be able to do.
Okay, now for the closing statement. Barry first.
1 minute. I think you've heard my background. I have a lot of background in the town, a lot of positions that I've held in the town. I think it's important to give something back to our community, and I hope that you elect me as school district moderator.
Bob?
Thank you, Norman. 35 years I've lived in town. As I mentioned, my children went through the whole Timberlane School District. I'm familiar with the district. I have the experience. The fact that I'm an attorney doesn't hurt in this case. And I want to continue my service to Plaistow and to the entire Timberlane Regional School District. So I'd ask you to support me, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you both, Bob and Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
We're going to start, as I mentioned, with an introduction and introductory presentation by each of these candidates. I'm going to start with Peter because B comes before K and M. And gee, miraculously, they all happen to be in alphabetical order. Who did that?
This is a library.
So you have not, this is the library.
It's not a mistake.
How would you arrange this in Dewey Decimal?
So you have 90 seconds for your introductory presentation.
Hi, I'm Peter Bilo. I've been in Plaistow since about 1988. I actually had the pleasure of moving next to Dave and Helen Hart. For those of you know, some of the old timers here, Helen was our town clerk, and Dave was on planning board, I believe. They quickly saw me as kind of fresh meat. I was single, living in a small house, not having a lot to do. And they twisted my arm to get me to ask me to run for budget committee. So I spent 3 years on the town budget committee, working with people such as John Sherman, Buzzy Blind, Leroy Doobie, learning a lot from all of them. At that time, I didn't think it was really my forte. I actually stepped off for a little bit. I've ended up spending about 15 years now on the Zoning Board of Adjustment. This year, I'm the chair. Spent 3 years on Planning Board. Tim Moore over there was our chair. I learned a lot from him. I've been involved in the school since my children really hit middle school, I'd say. I've been on the school board for 6 years. While I was on school board, initially, my mentor assigned to me was Mr. Mascola here, who taught me all there was to know about policy making and rewriting policies. I stepped off and ran for school budget committee, been on that for a couple of years. Inside the schools, I'm volunteer running the Timberlane Astronomical Observatory. Most of you didn't know we had one of those, I'll bet. I do some data analysis for the school district. I'm an alternate on the Energy Committee. I'm very heavily involved. This year, I have the pleasure of working with Linda over here as an AARP volunteer doing taxes over at the Vic Geary Center, something I'm quite enjoying.
Thank you, Peter. And just for the
I thought it was 2
record.
minutes for
Yeah, we
contesting.
did. We gave you
Okay.
an extra 30 because I made a mistake at 90 seconds, so we added 30 on, so
Thank you. Sure.
you did good. So it's Mike that only gets 90 seconds because he has no opposition. So Barbara, you're next, and you do have 2 minutes as Peter did.
All right, I'd like to thank the Plaistow Public Library for hosting. My name is Barbara Kishka. I'm running for the Timberlane Regional School District School Board representative from Plaistow. I've served Plaistow on several committees over the last 5 years, most recently on the Old Home Day and the Timberlane SAU 55 withdrawal committees. I value education and our teachers. I have a Master of Engineering Management and a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science. My 28-year-old child has a Master of Book Conservation and is self-supporting. My goal is that all our children will be able to get the education they need to successfully support themselves, whether it be in the trades, in industry, advanced education, or the arts. I'm an experienced manager in private industry. I served at the director level of a software company for 6 years, helping them achieve their most successful years ever as a result of my involvement in budgeting, cross-department communication, and setting priorities. As a Plaistow taxpayer, with multiple neighbors who are just getting by, I value keeping our taxes as low as reasonably possible. In short, I want to ensure we have good schools and are getting the most value for our money. This includes thoughtful, effective maintenance and renovation to extend the life and usefulness of our school buildings. People on the committees on which I've served will attest that I do my fair share of work. I listen to all points of view and clearly articulate my own. I am no rubber stamp. I respectfully ask that you vote for me, Barbara Kishka, for school board representative on Tuesday, March 10th at Pollard School. Polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Thank you, Barbara. Next, Mike,
90 seconds, huh?
90 seconds.
All right. My name is Michael Mascola. I've been in town for 4 years. Prior to living in Plaistow, I lived in Atkinson for about 20 years. I have 3 children. They all went through Timberlane. We had a great experience. My volunteering experience in Atkinson include the Energy Committee, I was on the Library Committee, and the Ethics Committee. But then I got a chance to join up at the schools. I was on the Timberlane School Board for about 8 years. Then I took a little break, and I came back. I just completed my first term on the Budget Committee of 3 years, and so I'm rerunning right now. I've been the chair of the Budget Committee for the last 2. We try and work hard on the Budget Committee to be fair to the school, to give them the resources they need to have adequate funding, and also be respectful of the taxpayers, which is a big challenge. That's all I really have.
Thank you, Mike. So now I have a question that is going to be asked of all 3 of you, and we're going to start off with Peter, and then the next time we'll start with Barbara, and we'll work down. This is one that's popped up in a lot of these online questions. Where do you stand on the Timber Lane withdrawal issue that's coming up on the ballot? So we'll start with Peter. Where do you stand on the Timber Lane withdrawal?
Well, that's a difficult issue, and I've really struggled with it. I think the withdrawal committee put in a lot of effort, a lot of work. Sadly, I think there's some flaws in the analysis. There's clearly contradictions in it, whether they need to drop 2 people or 3 people, whatever. I really think it deserves more study. I'm probably going to vote against it. That said, if the district votes to withdraw, I'll help it. As a professional project manager, I can kind of help us go through the chaos and get out the other side, minimize the disruption to the kids as much as possible and to the district as much as possible.
Thank you, Peter. Barbara?
Thank you. The Withdrawal Study Committee, I was on the Withdrawal Study Committee, and I spent most of last summer attending meetings and reviewing a lot of withdrawals from across the state, along with my other committee members. We found that Hampstead, I went in not knowing which way I wanted to vote, but after studying and finding out Hampstead and Timber Lane don't have that much in common. We've been together in this school district for 100 years, so I don't want to make any decisions based on who's currently holding what office. This is about, for many years, the Timber Lane and Hampstead have not felt equal. There's been tension. When we have regular voting, Hampstead has the upper hand. When we use weighted voting, Timber Lane has the upper hand, and neither one of them is happy. So looking at this and many of the other things, we have almost nothing in common except a fingerprint machine. It is in our best interest to withdraw as the committee recommended, and I support that withdrawal. It will be best for all involved. It will be not a smooth we'll try to make the transition as smooth as possible, but it will be better than all these lawsuits.
Thank you, Barbara. Mike?
Can you just repeat the 2 questions? Do you support it, and what was the second part?
Where do you stand on the Timber Lane withdrawal issue? There's only one part.
So I support the withdrawal. That's pretty simple. And I am not confident in the numbers that I've seen. So I believe the costs are going to be more than what's been presented. End of story.
Thank you. Next, this may be a budget question, but I think it also, having moderated the school district, I think it also affects the school board members. But we're going to start with Barbara. What is your position on the surplus? We had a very large surplus last year in the budget, and that was brought up and discussed at the last deliberative, and the people wonder, what is your position on the amount of the surplus, the number of the surplus?
Well, the first thing people think is you're being taxed too much if you have a surplus. But as I believe both of these gentlemen have pointed out before, when you're dealing with a $70 million budget, you need to have some wiggle room in there. You need to over budget to some degree to handle contingencies. That said, $4 million is, we might want to have less than that, but it should be returned to the taxpayers. I know that they want to use it to upgrade the schools and keep the schools maintained, and I agree with that in principle, but it's the taxpayers' money. They need to help us set the budget and use it as they wish.
Thank you. Mike?
So what should they do with the surplus? That's a good question. So they did put some of the money into capital, and I do support that because we are grossly behind in our infrastructure and maintaining them. We're leaking on roofs, walls, foundations, windows. So we had an extremely large surplus of $4 million. I would be okay if they put some into capital and other types of projects, and then they return some portion back to the taxpayers.
Thank you. Peter?
So I think we're all in violent agreement on this, actually. So what actually happened was there was about a $4 million surplus, and the school board decided to take about $1 million of that and put it to capital to do repairs. And by the way, when we talk about repairs, it's not like a house. That's one of the things I've learned being on the school board and budget committee. You know, to replace my roof is $12,000 or $13,000. To replace the roof in the middle school is about just over $900,000, and that's just one item. So they took about $1 million, put it to capital, took $3 million, returned it to the taxpayers. I think that's reasonable, and I would have done that. I think I would have voted on that myself. And by returning it to the taxpayer, what they do is basically, we can't write a check, sorry, but they hold that money at when the next budget's made and the voters vote on it, they use that $3 million surplus to reduce how much the taxpayers actually pay. So.
Thank you. The next is a social media question. The question is, how do you feel about elected officials blocking constituents on social media and/or not answering while they actively post and reply to others? So a social media, how do you deal with social media? I think we start with Mike.
This is going to be simple. I have got the most gorgeous granddaughters. That's the only thing I use Facebook for. As far as the other stuff, I pay no attention to it.
Thank you. Peter?
I think social media is just that. It's social. It's not business. And there are certain people I block because they either make me angry or they it just upsets me when I read some of their material. So I just don't deal with that. If somebody reaches out and telephones me, and my telephone number is all over, or emails me, again, my email's all over, I'll discuss things with them. But on social media, you know, that's my personal area.
Thank you. Barbara?
I am very active on Facebook, and I have blocked no one. I like to hear all points of view. If somebody is saying something I don't like, I just skim it, but everybody's entitled to their opinion. I do like being able to stay on top of what the current issues are, what people are talking about. Like currently the coronavirus is the big deal. So, yeah, I just don't block anybody.
Thank you. This one, I believe, starts with Pete. What would you do as a member of the school board or the school budget committee to help reduce the number of lawsuits that the school board, the district has been encountering? Is there anything that you would do or bring to the board?
Yes, there's a couple things. I'd say first and foremost, I would do my utmost to ensure that the board is operating within the law. There's been a couple lawsuits. There was one last year that I actually participated in on the other side, and there was another one this year where the school board did not follow the RSAs in coming up with a default budget. And last year, the judge initially thought it was too early, then thought it was filed too late, and then it was like, oh, it's too late. This year, the judge, Rob Collins from Danville, filed it. This year, the judge actually told the lawyer for the school district, go back and fix this, or I will fix it. So indicating that Rob was correct. They weren't operating within the law. So we have to really be very wary of operating outside the RSAs. That's it in a nutshell.
And for those that aren't familiar with anachronisms, RSA means our New Hampshire Revised Statutes, annotated, the short-term RSAs.
Right.
Thank you.
So to reduce lawsuits, again, if we support the Timber Lane withdrawal, we will reduce the number of lawsuits because we will be down from having 3 legal teams down, which are currently suing each other, down to 1 legal team. We have the Hampstead legal team, the Timber Lane legal team, and the SAU legal team, and we're paying the fees for all of those. Well, we're not the Hampstead one, but SAU and Timber Lane. The other one is to listen and work in a timely manner with the committees, again, to make sure they're following the law. But I personally am not inclined to sue if I'm not winning an argument. So, unless school committee member who sues people.
Thank you. Mike?
To reduce lawsuits, for the budget committee, we have not had any lawsuits. For the school board, what would I think they need to do? It's a tough one. You've got a very diverse spectrum of vocal people on that board, and their hardest part is respectfully respecting other people's opinions. Some of the RSAs are subjective, especially when it comes to defining a default budget, and I think that's where they had a lot of their difficulties. But it's about open and clear communication respectfully, and I don't think they're hitting that mark.
Thank you, Mike. I think, Barbara, I think you're first on this. I think all of you sort of covered this somewhat with the withdrawal issue, but one of our constituents asks, do you agree with the numbers on the cost of the withdrawal? And if not, what do you estimate they might be?
All right, I get to
Barbara.
start?
Yeah.
Lucky me. I was on the withdrawal committee. I was with them when they were, if you watch the meetings, when we were discussing the estimates that we put forth in the proposal. So in the plan, you have to put forth a feasibility study. What might it look like? Not exactly what it's going to look like, but just show that it's possible to create a single district SAU, which is what we did. We also crafted a sample budget. I wanted to do a range of values to show that it could be less, it could be more. It's likely going to be more. I don't disagree. But they said, we want to do a snapshot. And so that's what we did. So we did a snapshot with single values rather than a range of values. I do not have a firm estimate on how much the transition would cost, but I do know it's not millions and millions because we only spend $2 million on the full 2-district SAU as it is now.
Thank you. Mike?
I was not on the withdrawal committee. I don't have an exact number of what I think it would be. I'm going to guess it's a strong million and north of there. I'm looking at, if we withdraw, we don't own any of the computer infrastructure, the phone system, any of the software licensing. Just think what the school has to do. They have to go get software licensing for doing payroll, human resources, you name it, to do the whole thing. We won't own any of that, so we have to go acquire all that. And then, of course, there'll be learning curves for numerous people. So I think it's going to be at least $1 million.
Thank you. Peter?
So I hate to do it, but I have to disagree with Michael a little bit.
Okay.
I think we're going to own the servers and things like that. What we're going to lose is all the software we use. Again, it's not like Microsoft Office. All of these, what they call enterprise software, are $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year. Right now, Hampstead pays 23% of the fee for each of those. We pay 77%. So we're going to have to pick up all that on our own. Also, Hampstead so right now, Hampstead makes one direct payment of about $500,000 a year to fund the SAU. We'll be losing that each and every year. And I know the withdrawal committee decided, or I shouldn't say, they looked at losing one administrator and one assistant. That'll save us $100,500, maybe $200,000 a year, $200,000 a year. But I actually listened to our business administrator, who's a professional, more, and when he kind of rolled everything up, he believes it's going to cost us between $500,000 and $900,000 extra per year, each and every year. Again, I can't put my hand on that number. I'm not a financial accountant. But I do believe the professionals.
Thank you, Peter. The last question for all of you, and Barbara sort of mentioned it, although we're not trying to go crazy, the coronavirus is a major issue about in the newspaper, and what do you do if it hits the school? And can you give us your thoughts about how should the school react if it encounters a case of coronavirus at the school? Let's start with Peter.
Oh, okay. So I think they already have one or two, and those, I thought people came back from Italy, or is that a different district?
That's us.
Pardon me, that's us? So those people are not being taught right now. They're in quarantine. I think there's not one answer to that. And actually, I sent an email to some of the administrators and the superintendent last week about this. We need to put together what's in industry called a business continuity plan. Basically, look at all the possible levels of coronavirus and issues that could happen, and have responses in place to respond to them if or when they occur. And I've spoken with some of the folks this week, and I know that they're actually working on that. There's a lot of things in technology we can do for distance learning and things. So that's all good. Do I think there's going to be a huge coronavirus thing? I don't know. Who knows? But they are working towards a plan to address different levels of it, and I'm happy with that.
Thank you, Peter. Barbara?
I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. So as long as the administration is following the CDC recommendations, the Centers for Disease Control, that's good, that's great. I like what Peter said about the business continuity plan. That's a good thing to have anyway, because there are more kinds of disasters than just disease. And also he touched on remote learning, which is something that I really want to see happen. We've got students being out of school for multiple weeks, both due to this and to school suspensions, and I don't want them to miss out on their learning. I don't want them to hurt our graduation rate. Everybody should try to be able to graduate. So the blizzard bags are a really great thing. I really like what they've been doing with that, but that's for 1 or 2 days. We need to develop a plan for remote learning for longer periods.
Thank you. And Mike?
I'll start by saying I agree thoroughly with what Barbara and Peter have previously said. I think the best thing our school can do, our superintendent, is to surround themselves with the professionals from all the organizations, CDC, NIH, State Health, and work with the towns. We have an emergency management, what is it?
Emergency response team, I think.
We have an emergency response team here, so we're going to work with them and come up with the plan.
Scott's passing me notes here. It's like being in school, so if you
And thank
give
you,
me a
Barbara.
moment to read them.
Well, we're the school board.
We can give them detention.
So we started with Peter with the introduction, so I'd like to go to the other end of the table and go with Mike for your 1-minute wrap-up and conclusion, and move down the table. Mike?
If anybody would like to reach out to me, I'm more than welcome to speak to you on the phone. You can find my phone number on the district website for the Timberlane Regional School District Budget Committee. They list all the members. I'm on there. I'll be more than glad to talk to anybody about topics or any questions you may have. I want to thank the Plaistow Library and everybody for coming out to listen, so thank you very much, and I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Barbara?
Hi, I just want to address 2 things really quickly about the computers. The computers are on a per-user, per-seat basis, so it is very easy to divide up, and we aren't going to have to take on Hampstead's piece. The 500 versus 900K, if Hampstead is paying 500K for the full district, I don't see how we could suddenly have to pay 900K to cover costs, how the costs are going up 400K. But anyway, I'm still Barbara Kishka. I'm committed to providing a good education to the students of Timberlane Regional School District and ensuring Plaistow taxpayers get good value for all the taxes they send to the schools. I'm ready to follow up on the recommendation that Timberlane create a single district SAU focusing 100% on Timberlane with 100% budget accountability to the voters of Plaistow. I'm committed to ensuring our teachers are treated and paid fairly and get recognition when they find innovative ways to enhance education at low cost. I respectfully ask that you vote for me, Barbara Kishka, for school board representative on Tuesday, March 10th. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. See you at Pollard School. Thank you.
Thank you. And Peter?
Okay, thank you. So I've sat on the planning board, I've sat on the school board for a number of years. Areas, boards, we have to make decisions that affect a lot of people. Frankly, I will admit that not every decision, I have a long history, and not every decision I've made is, in hindsight, has been the right one, but I think the vast majority of them are. But I have demonstrated my willingness to unwaveringly support the students, staff, taxpayers, and help build this school district. I hope you consider all that on Election Day. And before we leave, I just want to point out that I brought 3 copies of the high school program of studies. It's in the back. Most of us here in the room probably haven't seen all of the recent additions to, what kind of classes we offer in high school. Please take a look at them if you're interested. There's a really nice variety of classes to help our kids thrive when they leave. Both of my kids went through the district. They're both young professionals. They're doing well. Neither of them at home anymore. So the district's done very well by us.
Thank you. And how about a round of applause for these candidates and thank them for being here. Appreciate. Jay will get 90 seconds. The rest of the panel will get 2 minutes for your introduction because you're contested or semi-contested. So we'll start with Jay, and you got 90 seconds, Jay.
Hi, thank you for the library for having this. My name is Jay DeRoche. I'm running for selectman. My wife and I have been in town for a number of years. We both work full-time. We have 2 kids in the school. We're very committed to this town, and we do a lot of different volunteering. I'm just finishing up 3 years on the budget committee. I've been a cable committee chair for a number of years in town. I've been in the Lions Club. I'm a board of director at the Vic Erie Center, which I think is a very important place in town for our seniors. I've been involved with Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, baseball. I helped build the playground over at Pollard School, and I've also worked with the Recreation Department, John Gifford at Terra Farms, to establish the community garden in town, which has been very successful it's coming up on our 4th year. So I'm very committed and involved with the town, and I want to continue that service by putting my time in as a selectman. So,
Thank you, Jay.
thank you.
Tim?
Tim Moore, I've been on the planning board now for more years than I like to admit, I guess, 31 or 32. It's been a very interesting transition to see what things get built and what doesn't get built. This last year, we've been very busy. We finished up redoing the 2 impact fees. We spent a lot of time updating our master plan. As a follow-up to the master plan, we'll be looking at 125, doing a corridor study, at least laying the foundation for probably doing the actual study in 21. But it's all very exciting when you can take a few minutes from looking at site plans and septic designs to look at the future land use. So really looking forward to those next couple of years. All of these things cost money, so I've been on the capital improvements program committee for a number of years as well, and I look forward to doing more work on the CIP.
Thank you, Tim. Karen?
Okay, I've been in town since 1966, when my husband and I moved in, and we raised 3 kids. We've been here for a long, long time. I worked on the school board for 12 years. I was on the budget committee for them for 2. And that's basically what I really have been into, because I was a teacher also at Pollard School. So now it was looking more for what's going on in the town, how we can keep it the way I remember it, I guess, and the way a lot of us do, and to go over zoning procedures, and also to make the town people know what your procedure is in order to apply for something, and to make it clearer, be transparent. And I'm really interested in really planning for the town to become more of a nice town that's service for us as well as everybody else across the line. And I just think we've had an excellent start with the medical building. that is going up now, which we've needed for a long, long time. And I just want to further it, is what I'd like to see, further development for the people in the town.
Thank you. Darrell?
Hi, I'm Darrell Britton, and I've been here since 1965, so it's been a long stretch here, but it's what I've called home and love the town. It's a place where I've served on a lot of committees, virtually every committee in town at one point or another, including being selectman. I find that, for me, at this point in my life, it's about helping out as much as you can. And being on the budget committee, in the amount of time that I have to give, that sort of was a great fit. It also allows me to take and have input onto what's being spent and how it's being spent, trying to not curtail growth, but to take and plan it a little bit, rather than just letting it go wild at all. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm running.
Thank you, Darrell. Bob?
Excuse me. My name is Bob Hamilton. I've been in town since 1987. My wife and I ran the paint store here in town on 125. We're in the store now. I've been on the budget committee now for the last 4 years, and I've learned a lot. And I think you all know that we've just had the largest increase in our residential property tax bills in our town's history. And I think we all need to know the reason why. All of our neighboring towns have had new residents every year. Plaistow is not. And those new residents for the surrounding towns have helped offset their budget increases. Plaistow's population actually declined 138 residents between the 2000 census and the 2010 census. And even now, when we're facing another U.S. census this year, we're barely going to reach the numbers that we had, the population that we had back in 2000. Even more disturbing is the factor that tax revenue from our busy 125 corridor actually dropped last year. I've done a survey as your town auditor, and I've audited those tax records for the last 2 years, and there's a copy of that up on the table if you'd like to take a look at it. I've done each property, and you can see how much less they're paying in taxes this year over last year. Thank you.
Thank you. 3 different groups of people here, but I'm going to try to get a question that everybody can answer. That's not easy with all these questions. But I'm going to focus on Main Street. Main Street. So for Jay, the selectman candidate, would you be in favor of the town taking over ownership of Main Street to have more control and stop the heavy truck traffic that now occurs on it? Jay?
It's a great question. There's a cost involved with that, taking over Main Street. Paving, plowing. If I know an exact number, I can try to make an informed decision about that. But in doing that, it's going to cost us more to take that over. So I'm not in favor of taking over right now. So.
Okay, thank you, Jay. And not the same question, Tim, but similar. What visions do you have for Main Street? Should it be rezoned and allow more intense business to expand, or keep it the character it is now, more like the village?
Yeah. Well, when we talk about Main Street, we actually now have 3 different zones. We have a village center district, which starts here at the library and goes north to where Little River crosses Main Street. It includes the town hall and also Elm Street. So the safety complex and district court are in that. One of the characteristics of the village center is to be pedestrian friendly. So the goal is to get sidewalks on both sides of the street where it's possible. It's not possible everywhere, but it's largely doable. Those are very expensive. There are federal and state grants to pay for 80% of those if your applications are successful. So the plan to do that is to put money away in our transportation infrastructure capital reserve, and then every 3 or 4 years do some segment of sidewalks if that's the consensus of where we should go. From the library south to 125, the Haverhill line is our commercial 2 district that has small businesses, 35% lot coverage, I think, up to 2,000 or 3,500 square feet. I've forgotten the exact number. And then, sorry, is that?
If you could close it out.
So then north of 125 on the other side of Main Street is all residential. So brief answer is no, I don't think we should expand the business sizes along any part of those 3 districts.
Karen?
Okay, I'm the new kid on the block, so I'm not as known as much. But the zoning amendment that we have at the very end, which is Z 2015, the last one, that is to vote yes, to go from the C1 back to C2. And that is what he was talking about, business, that way from the library to the line. I know that's one thing that I wanted to work on. And then also, as far as keeping it, yes, I very much want to keep the character of the town the way it is. Do not want to rezone it. And then where the residents are, I think that's where we can do some more too, residents for, people to come in, so.
So that C zoning amendment, you're not in favor of it?
Yes.
Or you are in
Oh,
favor
yes,
of it?
I am in favor of this one. Yep.
Okay.
Z 2015, that is to get the section going from the library up to the line.
I only got confused because that would rezone it, but I thought you said you were against rezoning.
No, I want to keep the character at the main
Oh,
part of the
okay.
town. I'm sorry, I didn't word that right. No, up this way, that's fine. I want to keep it that way. Yep.
Okay. So for the Budget Committee, not so much Main Street, but Main Street and 125. We already heard everybody admit and agree that our residential property taxes went up astronomically. What do you think can be done to maybe better balance the taxes between residents and the commercial districts and the commercial properties on Main Street and 125, especially 125?
Well, I think that the commercial district, and I hate to say this, should pay probably a disproportionate amount of money versus what the residents are paying. They're getting a lot of attention that we, as the local residents, don't. In places like future water, they have fire protection, which a lot of us don't have. They have the ability to take and have the state, take care of some of the problems, but we also have to buck up and pay for the fire and police department for all those areas. So I think it's not to ask them to pay the whole load by any means, but I think that they certainly could pay a greater chunk than what they're paying now and give the residents themselves a tax break.
Thank you. Bob?
It's not the businesses or the property owners on 125 that's at fault for not getting enough of a tax revenue from them. In fact, they didn't ask for a tax cut last year. We gave it to them in our assessments by doing a statistical update, which is not required by law, by RSA. It's not required by the New Hampshire Department of Revenue. The selectmen decided to do it, and what happened was that residential property increased 24%, and commercial property increased 2.5%, so much lower. And that way, when the tax rate was redistributed, they ended up with a huge tax break. In fact, 125 alone, we lost $630,000 in tax revenue from 125 alone. And that's only half of our commercial property. So if you look at it, at that being just half, we've lost over $1.2 million in tax revenue as a conservative estimate that we as homeowners had to make up on our tax bills in December. And you all saw it when you got your tax bill. It was a shocker.
Thank you. Now, first off will be Tim, and this question asked to the planning board. There was an approval of, quote, pro-quip at the corner of Main and 125 Sanborn's Candies. That was 3-2. This questionnaire says they believe there were wetlands and other concerns that neighbors and other people had. Can you tell us where you stood on that position of allowing that development?
Yeah, unfortunately, that case is still before the court, so I don't feel comfortable
Can't really say
in answering that until the court decision is resolved.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. So Karen, you'd say the same thing, so we'll skip over you.
Can't say anything.
So let's see if we have a good financial question for the Budget Committee. And this would also come back to Jay, so we'll start with Darrell. What's your position on surplus and unassigned funds? How would you work that into a budget that you might work on?
Well, I think surplus is something that everybody needs and has in their home, whether it's the business, town, or whatever. There should be some surplus. To the extent of the surplus is the question. I'm not in favor of having 5 and 10 and 15% surplus. I think if you have 2 or 3% of your total budget, then that gives you some buffer. With good planning, that surplus will stay in place. But there are the unexpected things that happen that you have to take and address, and that's where the surplus kicks in. But for the most part, if the town gives you the good information and you can plan accordingly, I think that surplus will hardly be used. I don't believe in having a big balance at the end of the year. I'd rather see people have that in their pocket than to leave it in the town.
Thank you. Bob?
The surplus of the budget is kind of a double-edged sword. If surplus can be used up, so it's the Budget Committee's job to really look over the budget and make sure that there's not a whole lot of extra in there that can be used up. If we go back and look at budget surpluses over the last 10 years, for example, it's tied in with budget increases. And between 2010 and 2016, which was a 7-year period, we only increased our budget by $1 million in those 7 years. In the last 2 years, we increased our budget by $1 million. The 2018 and the 2019 budgets were an increase. We went from $9 million to $10 million. So we're growing our budget faster now than what we were just a few years ago. And that's, to me, that's alarming. And it seems as though no matter how much extra we put onto the budget, how much we increase the budget, it gets spent, and that comes out of our pocket, and I think it's something that we all should be concerned about.
Thank you. Jay?
So for the town to carry, surplus, I think it's important to have some level of surplus at the end of the year to carry over, because you want to have that 2, 3, 4, 5% for buffer to carry forward. Now, I've always been on the fence whether we put it towards offsetting the tax rate or using it for capital improvements, but over the last couple of years, I like what the town has done as far as doing some of these big capital expenses, using some of that surplus. Now, on the other side of that, though, you don't get that tax rate offset. And it doesn't look like we have big projects coming up, so I might be more inclined to help offset the tax rate going forward. But then again, it's when that time of year comes around, I'd have to see all the information and make the decision at that time, so.
Thank you. Now I'll go to Karen, and then to Tim. We're going to go Karen, Tim, a planning board question. Can you tell us, where do you think the planning board should be going in the next couple of years? What would you like to see in town? Anything you can do as being a member of the planning board to maybe help plan the future? What would your plan be as a member of the planning board?
Okay, the section from where Sanborn's Candy was up until up to Mears Tractors, maybe, up that way. I would like to see that section not be a repeat of everything that's been down in the, this center down here. I would like to see that maybe even be, which has been suggested, maybe even a residence area in there, and to encourage smaller businesses that we have managed to discourage down here. They've all fallen apart or left us. I would like to see that come back, and maybe be that the section that we could encourage restaurants. We could encourage, now that we're going to have the water, that I think there's a lot more possibilities to put in that particular section of town. And just basically have places where we can go. I don't care if it's just a sandwich shop. It could be simple as that. No big stores or, you know, the business that takes all the parking and everything away and the busyness of it. And I just think I'd like to work on some of the zoning and try to get different things in now into the town.
Good, thank you. Tim?
Yeah, I agree with Karen on that. As I mentioned in my opening statement, that's one of the things that we plan on looking at, is the, I don't want to say rezoning necessarily, but reuse of 125.
Right.
And way back in 1988, when we redid the master plan then, we eliminated residential use from 125 because they were single-family houses. Didn't seem to us at that time that that was a good use of 125. Not safe for single families with children on the busy road, and et cetera, et cetera. Things have changed over the last many years, and the big box retail stores are not, they're not really a cash cow, to say the very least. And there's so many of them. I mean, they're all going out of business. So I think our plan for the future is, again, like Karen suggested, is these smaller mini villages within themselves where there's mixed use of retail and commercial, smaller shops, maybe on the first floor, second-story apartments, so you could potentially walk to work if you worked in one of the smaller stores below it. Or certainly in the evening, you could walk to entertainment or restaurants.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to go to the Budget Committee, and we're going to start with Bob. We all know that the Budget Committee this year tried to reduce the spending and had a lower budget. Whether you're on the committee or not, can you tell us, do you agree with that philosophy to attempt to reduce the town's spending? And we'll start with Bob.
Yeah, there were three reasons why we worked so hard this year to reduce the budget. And the obvious one was because we just had the largest tax increase in our town's history for residents. The other one is the growth of the population, which I already talked about. Our population hasn't been growing, so we don't have that annual chunk of money from new people coming in, paying their taxes, to offset our budget increases. And the third one, I think I mentioned also already, is the fact that our budget has gone from taking 7 years to increase $1 million to only 2 years, in 2018 and 2019. So it was up to us last year to really bring the budget back into line. So actually this year's budget, the 2020 budget, is actually a couple $100,000 less than the 2019 budget. So a lot of work has been done, and we've done it without affecting town services. We've worked with all of the department heads and the town manager and the Board of Selectmen as well. And good job of getting the budget back in line this year.
Thank you, Bob. Darrell?
I want to take a look at it from the standpoint of what we have for services, what we have within the town hall, and what is really needed. It seems as though the town, the employee base of the town has grown exponentially over what the town has grown. And I think that we need to take a look at that and take a good, hard look at it to see what we can do to take and bring budgets back into line, because a good portion of our budget lies within the walls of the town hall and the police department and, all the other services that were within there. Not an advocate of laying people off or things like that, but I certainly think as the population within the services that we have get older and they retire, maybe we don't replace them on a full-time basis. But I think we need to look at ways of cutting the overall payroll and overhead and still be able to keep the services that we have and make it possible for people to live in their homes well after they retire without having to worry about my taxes are so high I can't stay in town.
Thank you, Darrell. Jumping to Jay and the Select Board. Jay, as a new member on the Select Board, what would you do to help reduce this drastic increase in the residential property tax?
That's a good question.
If you got the answer, I'll vote for you.
So what I would do to help keep the taxes down, one of the things that we're going to be seeing this year is the increase, well, not an increase, but the values anew that's going to occur. So what we'll have to do is try to offset that increase, potential increase, with trying to reduce the operating budget. It might be a year where we pull back some of the warrant articles for our capital reserves. I don't know, but I need to see what the impact is going to be on what the increase will be, but trying to keep the budget tight. I don't think that we have a huge number of employees. I think that number has come down a little bit, so the overhead costs there aren't as high, but it's looking at everything, tightening it up where we can, and I'll put the work in to try to do that, so.
Thank you. Now I have a question. We'll start with Tim. Some people may or may not know that our Plaistow District Court is closing. And as part of planning, budget, and the Board of Selectmen, and being connected to the court system, I'd like to know, what do you think you can do on the Planning Board, the Budget Committee, and the Board of Selectmen to try to get the court back here into Plaistow? Tim?
Well, that's an interesting question, to say the least. As I understand it, the notice that we got from the district court is that the building that the court is in now is non-ADA compliant. ADA is Americans with Disabilities Act. So in order to make changes to that building so that it would be ADA compliant, would be several $100,000 at least, and maybe more. Now, that's just out of the top of my head estimate, and certainly didn't get any other estimate. So you have to weigh how much you want to spend in that. The other thing, which I do not know very well, is really what the impact is. Now, we know several years ago would have made police department spend a lot more money traveling to another town for their court appearances, and versus sort of walking across the street. a lot more now is done electronically, so there isn't always the necessity for them to go to court. And I think they've contracted with some firm that does a lot of that legwork for them. So, not a really informed opinion because not kind of my bailiwick there, but, so I understand what the cost is and of doing it or not doing it and see what we could do to come up with the best solution.
Thank you, Tim. Karen?
Yeah, no, I agree with Tim on that one. We've kind of known this for a couple of years, and all of a sudden it came out that that building wasn't up to code, and there isn't enough parking either that goes with it. So it kind of hit us all very quickly, but I think we kind of knew back a year or two ago that it was going to be a problem. As far as where they have to go, and I know the electronically, they can do more things now there at the office, but going up to Epping, I mean, I've gone up 125 millions of times having to do that myself, and it's really not that far. As, you know, obviously, it's a lot closer to just walk across the street. But I think the combination, I think we would do better to find another use for that building, maybe to our advantage more, is how I am looking at it. So that's just my opinion.
Thank you. So budget-wise, what does the budget committee think?
I think from a budget standpoint, that the building was everything else before it was a court. And it was a tool company, it was the library.
Library.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
it was a little taste of everything.
Right.
It was never designed for what it was being used for. I think that we got more than our fair share out of it over the years. They've been threatening to leave, I can't even remember how far back. It's been years and years and years. But they always seemed to pull it out the last minute. I think, Norm, you were instrumental in keeping them here.
Keeping it.
For a while. But I think, you know, it's the kiss of death. You know, do you spend a ton of money on it? Do you keep pouring money into it each year under the guise that, okay, the police department only has to go across the street? I think that was a legitimate thing back, you know, 10, 20, 30 years ago. Yeah. But I think now, with the electronics and everything else that's going on, I think we can get better value from other things than spending it on the court right now.
Thank you. Bob?
It's certainly not practical to invest money in that building because of the parking and all of the reasons. So our best bet, our only hope would really be that eventually they end up building a new courthouse. It's closer than Epping or someplace nearer to us. It would be nice if it was here in Plaistow. We have town-owned property right on 125 that could accommodate it. And I think the town manager has suggested that to the court system or whoever. And I think that's our only hope right now.
Thank you. Jay?
In general consensus with everyone on this panel. My thought was more along the lines of what Bob was saying, that we'd evaluate our town-owned property to see if there's an area in town where we could potentially work with the state to build a courthouse, not at the town's expense, but maybe at the state's expense. If it's beneficial for us, I would like to see what the actual costs are going to be over the next year of what we're paying to send our officers out, even though, you know, with electronics nowadays, it's making that less. But I'd still like to see how much we're going to be spending and see if there's a feasible piece of land in town where we could potentially work with the state on something. So.
Well, thank you. And just for the edification of the board, it's my understanding that our offices will go to Salem, New Hampshire at this point in time.
Oh, they can't go to the Brentwood one?
They're asking them to, our cases, to go to Salem. And then we can watch the budget and see how that affects it. Well, I want to thank you all. You've all answered difficult questions, especially the last one. I'd like to start with Bob and work back this way since we started with Jay. Your wrap-up, you have a minute to wrap up. Bob?
we can all be grateful that the Budget Committee has kept the operating budget in line this year, has brought it back in line this year. And I think that we need to do that in order to continue, so that all of us can continue to live here in Plaistow. I pledge that I will not ignore things that need to be addressed, and I think I addressed some of those things this evening. So, as you know, I'm not shy to do that. I'm looking forward to working with Darrell Britton on the Budget Committee. Having two former Board of Selectmen, Town Board of Selectmen on our Budget Committee, I think is going to be a real big asset to us. And I thank everyone for attending tonight and your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you. Darrell?
Thank you to the library for having us here tonight. It's a nice way to get a forum and get your opinions out. No matter who you vote for, I think the biggest thing is please just go out and vote. It doesn't matter who you're voting for or who you don't vote for. It's a privilege. Please exercise that privilege and get out there and vote. When I'm on the Budget Committee, I'll look forward to taking and trying to work as closely as I can, trying to keep the taxes within line. Nobody hates to pay taxes more than I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
Okay, I want to thank the moderators. I want to thank the library for letting us all be here. And I, again, am with Darrell on this one. Please vote. That's what we try to do the most. We try to get as many as we can out, and I know it's a struggle, but maybe this year, this is a good one, so I hope everybody will be coming out. And also, I have a lot to learn. I have a lot of training to do, but I'm very happy to be here, and I'm asking for your support, and I just hope you go out and vote. So thank you.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, let me reiterate the thanks to the library for hosting its annual candidates night. It's always, I think, very informative sessions. It's always a little more enjoyable when you're on the other side of the table.
That's true.
But I think for next year, I'm really looking forward to working along 125, seeing what might be rezoned out there. I would expect we'd have several public information sessions where we could gather in a forum like this and get public opinion as well. It's an area that's really crucial to the town. Very exciting to work with potable water. I didn't think I would see that in my lifetime, actually. But now with that $30 million grant, it is feasible, and so we know where it's going to go initially. Be very exciting to work on how we expand that out to the rest of the town. So
Thank you, Tim.
thanks.
Jay?
I just want to thank the library and everyone that came out tonight to hear us all. I think I'm pretty level-headed, logical. I'm willing to work with everybody. I'm willing to listen to what you have to say. I'll put the work in to leave Plaistow better than when I found it. One of the things that I'm excited about working on this year is the water, the contracts for some of the trash contract that will be coming up. So I'm looking forward to helping this town, and I'll put the work in to get us there. So
Great. Thank you.
thank you.
I also would like to thank the library trustees, Jim Peck, the chairman, all the trustees, Scott, our assistant director, Cab, who's here from the library, and my assistant, Norman, for helping this evening. Again, I want to thank all of you for being here, and those of you that are watching at home on cable. And as our candidates, thank all of them for coming out and putting your name on the ballot. That's important. Some of the questions asked, which we didn't ask, is how can't we get more people to be on the ballot? Well, I thank you for doing that. I think it's important that you step up and put your name on the ballot. And most important, I'd really like us to break that like 17.5% that come out to vote at our town election. So, and I will announce at the end of the night on March 10th, Pollard School, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., to hopefully we break that record. So come out, vote, exercise your constitutional right, your powers as a citizen of this community, of the Timberlane Regional community. I look forward to seeing all of you and all of you at home at the polls. And thank you very much for participating and for coming. Thank you.